Justice is justice, and whether it is on the civil side or on the military side, but it's only that some unique aspects have to be catered for within the codes of the military. All over the world, the militaries are very rigid towards change, and they're very resistant towards change. It is a change of attitude that is required more than recommendations of such committees. People in uniform also who are dealing with such issues that kindly have a large heart. Distress on the very soul of the military, the men and women in uniform, just for a few pennies. How to pose impediments, but you should be looking at how to help out people. It is the greatest disservice to say that there is no stress and strain in the military.
Hello everyone, welcome to another special episode of Fauji Days. Major Navdeep Singh is a lawyer practicing in the Punjab and Haryana High Court who is an expert in constitutional, service and military law. He has worked for the causes of the military community, including rights and benefits of soldiers, disabled veterans and military widows. He is also a globally respected voice on military justice reform. He is an author too and was nominated as a member of a high-level committee of experts constituted by the Government of India in 2015. He is also a member of the International Society of Military Law, Brussels, and a fellow of the National Institute of Military Justice, Washington, D.C. Here, for Fauji Days, he is being interviewed by Khooshi Anand, a student of the MCM DAV College, Sector 36, Chandigarh. Khooshi is an English honours student and is also studying psychology. Her hobbies include fitness and cooking. Coming from a family that has served in the uniformed forces, she is also interested in military trivia.
Welcome, Major Navdeep Singh. It is a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Khooshi. Thanks a lot.
I've jotted down a few questions and I would like to ask them.
Absolutely. Please go ahead.
Since you have dealt with a lot of legal issues concerning the defense services and also global military justice reforms, tell us about how military justice is different than regular justice on the civil side.
See, the concept of justice is absolutely the same. In fact, in all democracies, the concept of justice is the same. Justice in the defense services is different in the sense that it has to cater for the unique and peculiar circumstances in which any military operates. And of course, discipline is the bedrock of any military. So the aspect of discipline has to be kept in mind. But it also does not mean that in the name of discipline, justice can be sacrificed. So while maintaining a balance, the system must see that justice prevails. It's actually a myth that military justice is totally different than what we have in the civil courts or what we have on the civil side. And in fact, it's an exaggeration to say that it's totally different. I mean, you'll hear people saying this, that, oh, this is military justice. It's not like the civil world. Not at all. The concept of justice is absolutely the same. It's just that there are some unique, peculiar circumstances which have to be taken into account, and there might be some very unique offences in the military which may not have any particular concern on the civil side. For example, a soldier disobeying lawful command. Now, an offence like this has no significance or relevance on the civil side. But procedurally speaking, it is not as different as members of the public would perceive. The same principles have to ideally apply, even if they don't apply, but ideally the same principles have to apply, as when we are talking of per se military justice, we are on the aspect of the criminal jurisprudence, that is courts martial and disciplinary action in the defense services. So principles like independence of the system of administration of justice, principles like affording due opportunity to the accused or to anyone, principles like an independent prosecution and a robust prosecution. So all these aspects are valid in the military as well as the civil side. So I kind of, I won't say disagree, but I kind of point this out always, that there is not much of a difference between the two forms of justice. Justice is justice, and whether it is on the civil side or on the military side, but it's only that some unique aspects have to be catered for within the codes of the military.
Do you feel any reforms are required in India?
Absolutely, yes. As I said, independence is very important. So if you see on the civil side, the courts are absolutely and fiercely independent. And even the prosecution, you have an independent prosecutorial authority, and it is not intertwined with the courts or any other system or any other official establishment. And an independent application of mind is there. But speaking of India, although I won't say that the intention is not there, the intention of reform is very much there amongst the senior military staff, and there have been many studies on this. Many have spoken on this. But in India, I find that in the military justice system, the concept of independence is very hazy. You see all limbs of the system of justice, military justice, the prosecution, the members of the courts martial, which is the board or the jury which is examining the entire issue and which is sitting in judgment. The agency which is interested in seeing a conviction of an accused, all of them happen to function under the same authority. So there is no concept of independence, and even they are not aware, and they do not realize that they are supposed to be independent. They have to independently apply mind, because in any such system, the ultimate aim of justice or military justice is not to secure a conviction, it is to secure justice, right? So the ultimate aim is justice. It is not that you have to function in such a manner that you have to show that, okay, we've had 90% convictions or 99% convictions. So the system of independence has to increase. Now, the members of the courts martial are regular army officers who are advised by a judge advocate who is a legally qualified person. And the members of the jury, the members of the courts martial are not legally qualified. So it kind of has a conflict with Article 14 of International Convention of Civil and Political Rights, which calls for a competent and independent system of justice. So if you don't have someone who's legally qualified examining a very complex legal or judicial or criminal law issue, I think we need to have a system of change in that, and we really need to bring in more independence. The prosecution has to be absolutely free from the establishment. There has to be a director of prosecution who examines these issues independently and not swayed by the considerations of the establishment. Some of our officers are professionally very competent, but if there is no systemic change, if it is not instilled in them that this is how an independent judicial system should function, I wouldn't blame them or even the organization per se for not moving in the right direction. So all over the world, the militaries are very rigid towards change, and they're very resistant towards change. So, and all the changes that have come procedurally or even the way we function till now is because of the judgments by constitutional courts, by the high courts and the Supreme Court. It has not come out from an inborn process or an introspection by the organization itself. So I feel we need to move correctly in that part, and all over the world this has happened. Now in England, under the British system, we are following the old British system, and we haven't changed, but they have changed a lot. So that change came through a judgment called the Findlay's judgment, by the European Court of Human Rights, and that brought in a huge reform in the military justice system, the British military justice system, and they changed their processes, made it very much more independent. And now the Judge Advocate General of the British Army is actually a judge. In India, the Judge Advocate General is a uniformed officer. Over there, they're only retaining the name, but he's actually a judge who acts just like a civil judge, hears cases, and is not a part of the military, and he functions under the Ministry of Law and Justice, not under the Ministry of Defense. In Canada, there was a judgment called Generu judgment by the Supreme Court of Canada that initiated and triggered a lot of change, a lot of positive reform. So maybe one day we'll also realize, but I personally would like the organization itself to bring in a reform, to introspect and to start a change within. And you never know, it might happen, because we have recently instituted the concept of the Chief of Defence Staff, where all three services, there's coming together of all three services. So you never know that this process may also get triggered, and we may soon have some reformatory moves within our system also.
You made a part of a high-level committee to reduce litigation. So, do you think there are any positive changes?
That's a good question. This high-level committee was instituted by due to the vision of late Mr. Manohar Parrikar, who was the Defence Minister for India, and on the directions of the Prime Minister, because they saw that there was much to litigation in the Ministry of Defence and the Defence Services. And in fact, you'll be surprised to know that in 2014, at one stage, there were about 900 appeals pending in the Supreme Court against disability benefits to disabled soldiers. I mean, disabled soldiers who were granted relief by various courts and tribunals, and those judgments were taken into appeal by the Ministry of Defence and the Defence Services till the Supreme Court. So that was not a very nice commentary on our system. So Mr. Parrikar thought that this litigation has to come down. There was so much because it creates much of friction in the system, wherein the government and the employees and the former employees are rather than doing stuff or jobs for which they are meant for, they're indulging in so much of litigation, and it leads to heartburn. It leads to a burden on the exchequer also. So this committee was constituted. Yes, there has been a change. We made many recommendations which were accepted in principle by the government, and slowly the litigation against disabled soldiers almost vanished. There are still a few cases, and we still find that in certain cases the amount involved is very low, and the issue should not be taken into appeal or into litigation so much, but they're still taking them. But those are, symptomatically we try to address them. And again, it is a change of attitude that is required more than, recommendations of such committees, or even, tough stance of the political executive or the higher strata of governance towards lower level officers. More than that, an attitudinal change is required, that litigation should not be treated as an ego battle or a prestige issue, that a person has won against the mighty government, so we must teach him or her a lesson. So that is what should be avoided.
So do you feel there are any changes involved towards the attitude while dealing with the litigations about the military?
Absolutely. The first thing which I always say, and I always tell people in uniform also who are dealing with such issues, that kindly have a large heart. More often than not, you see that, as I said, that litigation is made a prestige issue, and small little things which are already provided for by the rules. The rules are very liberal, but the interpretation becomes hyper technical and literal. So the rules of the government cater for a number of benefits, and they cater for a liberal interpretation of benefits as also held by courts. But the people interpreting those rules take them very literally, and they tend to pose impediments in the implementation of those rules. So I always tell people that please be large-hearted. You know, you cannot afford to ascribe distress on the very soul of the military, the men and women in uniform, just for a few pennies. And money is just nothing when you compare it with morale, or when you compare it with a stress-free life of the men and women in uniform, and the retirees and the military veterans and also their families. So I think the attitude has to be very positive. You should not be looking at how to pose impediments, but you should be looking at how to help out people. So that's what I look at. And sometimes I feel that you know, people tend to moralize on certain issues. For example, if there is something permissible under the policy and it is financially already catered for, still people would start, oh, why should this amount be released? Oh, this will cause you know, nuksan to the exchequer, or this will lead to massive payments or payouts, which are not massive actually. So when something is already catered for under the rules provided in the policy itself, there is no question of officers of the military or even others moralizing over these issues. Your job is only to implement the policy as it exists or as interpreted by courts. You cannot be moralizing, saying that isse now nuksan ho jayega. Then no policy is sacrosanct. No judgment of a constitutional court is sacrosanct. If you start thinking, if you start imposing your own personal opinion on these issues, and you start thinking that iske andar jo provided hai, ye hum kaise de denge, isse ye ho jayega, wo ho jayega. That is not your job. Your job is simply to interpret it as interpreted by courts and implement it. You're not supposed to go into the morality of it. Of course, you have to be guarded and very careful that there is no corruption, there is no you know, false claim, and money is not wasted in that sense by corrupt means. Of course, that is there. But to pose hyper-technical impediments or to negatively interpret everything, that is not done. And that change must come. And it must come within the military first, and then the financial and the accounts authorities, etc., who should understand that these people, you know, whose policies you're dealing with, as I said, they are the very soul of the military. You have to first cater for the well-being and the welfare and the benefits of the man or the woman behind the gun, rather than, you know, just thinking about the gun and the machine. So that change has to come, and it must come fast. Things are changing, but I would like to see a much rapid change in that rather than regressing.
I have read your views regarding the myths surrounding disabilities in military. I would love to know more about it.
So this question, Khooshi, is also a very important question, and it is actually linked with the previous one. See, world over, the concept is that if any disability happens while in service, it is deemed to be connected with service, and disability benefits are admissible. It is deemed to be attributable to military service or aggravated by military service or related to military service. Of course, it will not cover aspects such as you know, drug abuse or substance abuse. But there are many myths, you're right. For example, not just on the civil side, but within the military. In fact, I find that, you know, the courts or the public at large, they understand the stress and strain of military service more than our own people. I don't know the reason. Maybe the reason is that, you know, you tend to get subjective while living that life, or again peer jealousy, or again, you know, hearing stuff here and there and then just without analyzing, just taking it as the gospel truth. So I give this example to everyone. People tend to say, for example, a heart disease, a soldier is suffering from a heart disease, and they'll say that how can this be related to the army? Even civilian employees can get this. They can suffer from the same heart disease. So I tend to give this example to everyone. A civilian employee they're also doing a very good, I mean, civilian employees, hats off to them. I don't subscribe to the view that the military is morally better than other employees or other professions. I don't subscribe to that view at all. But I'm just giving an example in this context. For example, if you are comparing it with a civilian employee who's working in his or her own city, works from 9 to 5. I give this example everywhere. Enjoys Saturdays and Sundays as holidays, guested holidays, restricted holidays, staying with his or her own family. Now compare that employee with a Fauji who's staying 10 months away from the family, 24 hours on duty. So many restrictions on fundamental rights and things which we take for granted. Now, a soldier cannot just walk out of his unit to go to the market. He's not staying with his family. He's staying in a barrack, in a regimented lifestyle with multiple restrictions on his rights. So, if he or she wants to go to the market, he or she will fill up so many registers, take requisition that I want to go on an outpass outside the unit lines, come back in time, in the time of the roll call, again at the gate, enter his name at the gate sentry, coming back, the same routine. Even to go to the washroom is regulated in time, as far as the time is concerned, that इस time पे आप नहाओगे, इस time पे washroom जाओगे, इस time पे parade पे पहुंचोगे, इस time पे खाना होगा, इस time पे ये होगा, वो होगा. Everything is regulated, and rightly so, to ensure discipline. अब उसके घर में कुछ होता है, any problem occurring at home, I again give this example. For a civilian employee, if let's say he has a 10-year-old daughter, she falls on the ground and bruises her knee, what does that person do? He will take her to the hospital, he will hug her, kiss her, be with her, take care of her needs. Now imagine a Fauji who's 10 months away from the family. Anything like this happens, he cannot hug his daughter, he cannot hug his wife, he cannot hug his child, he cannot be there, right? He cannot take care of their educational needs, their school needs, their medical needs, property issues, administrative issues with the civil administration. So what will happen to him? If he has a disability or a medical condition, it will naturally get aggravated. It will get aggravated. So to say that these are lifestyle diseases, how is a Fauji affected by it? It's a very big myth, and even more prevalent within the military and in senior officers. I mean, this is the practical life of a soldier, and we need him that way because it's the need of the requirement. So this is how the stress and strain of service affects, and it's an unsettled life, right? Even I give an example, even for senior officers who are posted in a peacetime location in a normal city, you have to change your accommodation twice or thrice. First you move into a single officer's accommodation, then you move into a temporary accommodation, then you move into a permanent accommodation. So in 2 years, 2 years of tenure in a station, or 2.5 years, you're changing accommodation 3 times. So all these things, they cause stress and strain, and it's a part of the military service, and it's all over the world. It's nothing unique for the Indian system. It's all there, all over the world, and it is recognized as such. So it is the greatest disservice to say that there is no stress and strain in the military, or to say that it's a stress-free lifestyle, and or to say that how can things like hypertension or a heart disease or coronary artery disease or ischemic heart disease or backache affect such people. It affects greatly, and these are invisible and insidious things which you cannot see. So you have to apply mind on these issues, and you must realize that you must stand behind your soldiers, and rather than sweating about disability benefits to them, you should be thinking how to make life of soldiers and their families better, stress free, how to reduce stress levels, how to have more clinical psychologists, how to provide better professional counseling, not the desi kind of a counseling that we have, but professional counseling. So these are the things, and there have been studies which say that military employees die earlier than civilian employees. Why is that? People think that soldiers serving in the army are very fit and they are the fittest and they are better than civilian employees. But the truth is otherwise. The truth is that they are dying earlier. Why? Because of stress and strain of military life. And we, in fact, in the committee of experts that you mentioned, which was constituted by late Mr. Manohar Parikar, in that we have a complete chapter on this, with medical inputs, with inputs of the apex medical body of the military, with the decisions of courts, with other data, to show how stress and strain of military service affects the soldiers. But one does not need to be dissuaded or feel bad about it, because it is there in the entire in all democracies all over the world. The only thing which we need is that let's not demonize medical conditions. Let's not say that these are somebody is feigning a disability. You cannot have a person who is injecting himself with sugar and saying कि मुझे diabetes हो गया and वो झूठी diabetes दिखा देगा. You can't do that. It's just not possible. So we have to be very sensitive about these issues and understand the issues or the matters like these which are affecting our people in uniform, and we must be very, very careful while flippantly discussing these topics or just brushing them aside or just rubbishing them. And again, I would say, let's be more concerned about our people, the flesh and blood, and their welfare, rather than just counting pennies and money.
Your latest book was March to Justice: Global Military Law Landmarks. So what is it all about?
Yes, Khooshi, it was a very interesting project, and actually enlightening for me also, although I've been dealing with the subject since more than 2 decades. It was a project with a very close friend of mine, Colonel Franklin Rosenblatt, who's a retired officer of the JAG branch of the Judge Advocates General Department of the US Army, who is now a military judge also with the National Guard in their Court of Appeal, and he is also a professor of law in the US. So what we did was that we were the editors of this book. So this book was a collection of essays in layperson terms, I mean in easy to comprehend language, by academics, by judges, and by lawyers all over the world on landmark decisions in various jurisdictions and in various countries, which made some change in their system of administration of justice on the military side. So we had very nice essays in it, and it was very well received all over the world. It was an international release, and we really wanted to have such a book because it's a unique book. There's no such book in the market all over the world. So we wanted to have this kind of a study and a work which was accessible to people who deal not just with the military, but with justice per se, with the legal proceedings, with human rights, with public policy, with politics, with polity. So we wanted to have it in a very non-technical kind of a format which people could just simply read and understand, and I feel that we succeeded in that aspect, in that respect. And so it's also a book which provides a comparative analysis of various systems from which you can take your learnings and your lessons, that how to improve your system and what the best practices in other jurisdictions, what to discard and what to embrace. So in that sense, I think it was a very satisfying project for me, and also for Colonel Rosenblatt, my friend, who was the co-editor. And I think that it has become a good part of any bookshelf all over the world, in institutions and in departments which are dealing with this subject.
Thank you, sir, for being here with us. It was a pleasure.
Thanks a lot, Khooshi. Thank you for having me here, and all the best in your future endeavors, and hopefully we'll have many more such conversations. And I really liked the informal kind of a way in which we discussed things. And thank you for your insightful questions. Thank you so much.
Friends, our Faujis have been and continue to be the lifeline of our nation. Come hell or high water, they have always been there for us, whether in times of war or natural calamity or any other challenge India has ever faced. And the culture, traditions and history of the Indian military are part of a rich heritage, painstakingly preserved by one and all. To cherish and celebrate this heritage, a unique initiative called Fauji Days has been launched by the budding startup 99 Beagles. So what is Fauji Days? Well, it is primarily an oral history project based on interviews and recordings. Faujis always have tons of stories to relate, many of them inspiring, thought-provoking, funny or engaging, and highly satisfying for the curious, especially young adults in their formative years. These engaging interactions between officers, men and women from our services, with young adults from schools and universities are being captured on camera by us. We want to showcase the diversity of lived experiences on the one hand and the perceptions and expectations on the other. Allow me to also add that the scope of Fauji Days initiative is not limited to just oral history. It also encompasses the written word and the world of military publishing. Already, several books by eminent military authors have been published under this umbrella, and all have been well received by the readers. The Fauji Days website is another crucial resource designed to house the diverse aspects of this project. It features multiple blogs, reference and archival material, and a community newsletter that highlights the progress made as well as the new recordings and books. Feel free to log on and subscribe. I warmly welcome you to be a part of this initiative, no matter what color uniform a Fauji wore, or whether he or she served on terra firma, flew in the air, or rode the waves. The fact remains that each one of these brave hearts is a reservoir of remarkable tales and cherished memories. Fauji Days wants to share these memories and tell these tales to a much wider audience. If a nation is made of memories, then Fauji Days will prove that Fauji men and women have contributed some of the best. As a Fauji, you can reach out to us and tell us about your rich experiences. Get in touch and we will revert with an audiovisual team equipped to capture your recall. Or if you're too distant, we can guide you about how to record and send it to us. Of course, you can also write your tale and send it to us to be featured here. We have the wherewithal to capture you on video from whatever location on the planet. All we want is to know your story so that India knows her story better. It is incomplete without yours. Please also feel free to send your contributions to this archive of India's valor in the form of nostalgic pieces, anecdotes, pictures, or other content you may wish to share with the wider Fauji Day community. On behalf of Team 99 Beagles, I thank you. As they say, Fauji Days never end. In fact, they are just beginning. So, Fauji Days forever. Jai Hind.